To the Awesemo.com live before lock show. We're taking you through all the finer points of today's 6-game MLB main slate and all the things that you need to know throughout the course of the next hour and change as we bring you up to lock at 7:10 p.m. Eastern time. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my pal, the baseball savant Jake Hari. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing pretty well. Just got done with the 2-game Degen slate this morning, or I guess this early afternoon, depending on where you're at. Late morning for you. But yeah, man, 6 games, and my exposures are not shaking out kind of the way I wanted to when I was on the strategy show this morning. So we'll see. But ownership going to be super important tonight. So we'll be keeping you guys updated on that.
And if you want to keep up with the ownership right now, you should go to Awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. Get all the ownership projections, the regular projections that you can just plug right into the Fantasy Cruncher, the deep dive column, the lineup builder tool, the top stacks tool. A lot of these things that we reference throughout the course of the shows throughout the day. All that's at your fingertips if you use that promo code live before lock right now. So go get half off your first month of Awesemo Plus with that promo code live before lock at Awesemo.com/join. So this slate's stupid, Jake. I'm never a person who likes to be negative about a slate, but there's a couple things here which I'm finding incongruent. One, I don't want to play Wade LeBlanc, and I he's not the chalkiest pitcher, but let's hit on him up front. I don't want to play him. He's a projected long reliever for Seattle, coming in behind Eric Swanson. But he is in a decent spot. He projects decently well. It's also going to be pretty highly owned. I hate him. I'm getting a lot of him, though, because people are going to the Tigers as a popular bat. So I'm getting LeBlanc as both leverage and for his projection. I don't like it. How are you feeling about Wade LeBlanc?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable playing LeBlanc, especially when you factor in the 30-plus possible percent ownership. I mean, he's not a good pitcher. He's not a great pitcher. He's had a decent career, and in terms of just like eating up innings. So, I mean, he's got a better chance at the win. So on DraftKings, it's fine because you're not worried about the quality start. FanDuel, it's a little bit tougher, even though I got to a lot of them on FanDuel as well. So 2 pitcher sites for LeBlanc. He's kind of just the cheap guy that's got the clearest path to 15 or so points against a bad team. So it makes sense. I wasn't planning on being over the field on him, but it looks like that's what it's going to be tonight. I'm going to be close to half my lineups having good old Wade LeBlanc.
It's a thrilling play to have Wade LeBlanc. And the reasons why I'm in particular, I guess, just to kind of dwell on this a little bit, because we do have a long time here to go to just go cover 6 games. But LeBlanc on the year, a 5.1 xFIP, a 17.6% K rate. Both those numbers not good. Also giving up a 4.8% home run rate despite pitching half the time at a park that's inhibiting home run power. So there is some reasons to go to Detroit. I think a couple guys here jump out in particular. Castellanos, by far their best hitter versus lefties, with a 179 WRC plus and also a 224 ISO. But as Adam on the deeper dive pointed out right before us, the bottom of the order here is pretty ugly. And that's what LeBlanc should be seeing when he first comes in. Guys like Kristen Stewart, Nico Goodrum, who's not bad but doesn't have power. John Hicks, also not that great. Jordy Mercer, not that great. So there's a logic in LeBlanc with the lineups. There's also a logic to going against LeBlanc. And I think I'm just going to have a little bit of it both ways. I think that seems like the best approach for this particular game.
I think that is. I think it's an MME slate. Well, I mean, every slate's an MME slate for me these days, but it's I couldn't feel comfortable making one lineup tonight. And even if 50% Wade LeBlanc, whatever I have of him, goes poorly, at least I have half of my lineups that at least could get me some of my entry fees back. So I'm going to be on the other side as well. I'm going to have some Detroit stacks for sure. Castellanos is especially a guy that I think you should target. And it's just, that just goes to show how poor of a pitching slate it is. It might be a fun slate otherwise. For bats, this is a really fun slate. For pitching, you're stuck with Chalk Wade LeBlanc, and he's kind of a guy that I can't really find myself to get away from.
Yeah, and I think especially on a slate of this size, obviously even on a 13-gamer or a 15-gamer, there's going to be value in going against popular pitchers or going with a pitcher against popular bats. And in this particular game, we have both sides are going to be pretty decently owned, so it kind of makes sense to have exposure both ways. And always an approach that we'll mention here, because this is a show where we talk about MMEing, even though mass multi-entering tournaments, if you are a person who plays single entry, a lot of the things will still apply. But in this particular case, if you're putting in multiple entries, this game could really blow up on either side in a meaningful way. And I think that's where we're trying to get that.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. like LeBlanc's not good. He's going to be chalk, and you've got some okay Tigers bats. You got one really good one in Castellanos, but I think everybody knows that that's not a secret. But yeah, man, I think the Tigers could do damage. Like, would you be shocked if after this slate we talk about it? Well, for me, a couple times, and we go through it, and then all of a sudden Detroit stack is the one that wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mini stacks here are going to be less owned. So I would say a full stack would probably be a little bit even less owned. Or excuse me, the mini stacks would be more owned rather. Full stacks won't be owned. So yeah, like a full stack here, just get into LeBlanc over and over again. And again, he's been giving up a lot of production to righties in particular, but there's a righty heavy lineup and, they're not good, but they do have a couple guys there. Wouldn't surprise me at all, which is stupid, and that's going to be the slate. But let's get on to another chalk pitcher, Jake. We got Jose Berrios, who is your dude, a dude who you've talked about a lot, at least over the last year and change that I've known you. And he's going to be the chalk pitcher on the slate industry-wide, getting a ton of ownership, over 40% on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's going to be over 30%. On Yahoo, he's going to be over 60. Oh boy, he's going to be 60% on Yahoo. So he is very chalky. Not a great strikeout pitcher, though, just a 21.5% K rate on the year. He does limit damage well with a 1.2 whip, giving up a 239 batting average, only a 2.8% on run rate. Berrios is a guy who I found it hard to avoid. I really wanted to get away from him. And the way that I'm approaching it today is I'm having a lot of Berrios. I'm having a lot of Giolito across from him. I'm pretty much even on those two guys. So that's my pivot point that I'm still with the field on Berrios, but I'm trying to match it with Giolito. How are you approaching Berrios today?
I am getting to a lot of Berrios as well, which is something I didn't really plan on doing either. But yeah, I'm kind of just following the chalk, at least on these two guys. Berrios, you mentioned, it is a good strikeout matchup against the White Sox, righties versus the White Sox. But he just hasn't really had the gaudy K numbers that we thought he would have by now. This is his fourth year in the league, and all of a sudden his K rate has dipped below 22% for the season. I don't know if it's something something he's deliberately trying to do or what, but he's just not striking guys out at a rate that would garner a 10-6 price tag. That being said, everyone else is priced up. You've got 8K Brett Anderson. He's just kind of the best of a lot of bad options, and you should 100% play him in cash. There's no question about that. GPPs, it's a little bit more difficult. I got, on my last crunch right before the show, I got exactly at the field. I got 42% when he was 42% ownership, and that's fine. I don't think he's deciding anything tonight unless the White Sox stack blows him up or something. But outside of that, I think he's probably a good candidate to give you 15 to 20, but he's not winning you anything tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you're just basically making it, you're just cutting it down to less players there because he's going to be so chalky. We're just competing against more lineups. But on this particular slate, I mean, look, I like Giolito, and we'll talk about him in a second more. And I think he has a little bit more strikeout upside. But Berrios, one argument you could make for him going back to last year, so a sample size starting in 2018, the beginning of that year, 23.8% K rate, and he's only at 21.5% this year. So maybe this is the spot where he starts to claw back at that percentage that he should be at if we're looking at a longer term sample size. And this is a spot where he can find those strikeouts. This White Sox team, 26% K rate versus right-hand pitching on the year. This lineup too has a similar amount. And also a couple of really high strikeout guys. AJ Reed can't hit anybody at all so far, 40% strikeout rate. Moncada, even though he's good, he has a 31% strikeout rate versus right-hand pitchers. So it is a kind of a perfect Berrios spot. But he doesn't project for over 2x value, and he's not the most exciting based on what we've seen. So, yeah, I think it's just a with the field day for Berrios in particular.
Yeah, like I would have been fine if I got 50% Berrios. I would have been fine if I got 25% Berrios. It's just like when you're multi-entering, it's hard to make a major stand on him here because if you go all in on him, then you're locking yourself into a certain lineup construction, and that's not really something I'm interested in doing with 150 lineups. And if you full fade him, I just don't think that's necessary because even if he doesn't go nuts, there's a good chance no other pitcher eclipses like 15 points, and he's the raw point leader with 18.
Yeah, that's exactly my logic with it as well. And, it's just one of those slates sometimes you have to pay for a degree of safety here. And even if he does give up some production, it seems unlikely he gets completely blown up. The White Sox really have nothing to offer here. They project poorly. I mean, you have a little bit of concern for Moncada, a little bit of concern for Abreu. Besides that, I mean, John Jay, a quality hitter, but a guy who's not going to show much power. There's really not a lot of reason to be concerned about Berrios. And, if you want to dice roll and go somewhere else, that's fine. But Berrios seems like the safest play, even if the ceiling isn't quite there as much as you'd want. Speaking about ceiling, Jake, so I think Giolito on the other side does have a pretty good ceiling. He's got a 29.7% K rate on the year, giving up just a 2.2% home run rate, also a 3.9 xFIP, which is actually better than Berrios has been on the year. He looks good. I know there have been some people have been concerned in recent starts where I guess there's been some less success for some of his pitch types, but I still think he's in a good spot here. Minnesota, a terrifying lineup to go up against, so that is one big downgrade for him. The Twins just been mashing right-handed pitching. But I think Berrios has upside, or excuse me, I think Giolito has upside, Jake. Do you agree?
I think he does have upside. Like we've seen it this season. I think he's got a swinging strike rate over 14%. Is that right?
Yep, 14.4.
I mean, the highest on the slate by a pretty good margin. We think Giolito's a good pitcher, not as good as what he was showing earlier in the season, and this is about as bad of a matchup as you can ask for. He did get more righties than we expected, with Buxton being back in the lineup, and then no Jason Castro, so it's Garver instead. And that also makes the Twins tougher to stack with a $5,300 catcher in Garver. But it's still not a really appealing matchup for almost $11K for Giolito. I think as an ownership pivot, if you're building one lineup and let's say either Giolito or Berrios fits, like I would make a case to go with Giolito if your lineup's chalky elsewhere, like if you're playing the Angels or Cleveland or someone like that. Maybe you just pivot to Giolito and hope he outscores him raw points wise and he has his K stuff. But I think Berrios is the number one pitcher pretty clearly, and Giolito's number two as far as raw points go. But Giolito does have more K upside. I think he's got a 25 DK point outing in him here. I don't think that's I shouldn't say I'm not predicting that. I think that that's not like a super unlikely outcome, because he has that good of strikeout stuff at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrifying Twins lineup on the other side, a 226 ISO on the year, going against right-handed pitching for the Twins. So that's still pretty scary. And this lineup they have, too, even though they do have a couple of weaker hitters in there, still pretty strong on the year with a 213 ISO against right-handed pitching. So I think it's a risky spot. I think Giolito's probably the most variant spot where I think, I believe in his upside, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he just had a very low point total game. And Berrios certainly the play in cash as well. And I think if you're risk averse, then Berrios would be to play. But I agree, for a single entry, it's all guts. No guts, no glory. And I think going to Giolito, there is the guts play that also has a logic to it.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. I mean, it's just completely different for MME and single entry when you've got an ownership discrepancy like what we're seeing here. On our latest update, we actually just got one just now. It looks like Giolito stayed about the same. Berrios dropped a couple percentage points, but you're still getting Giolito, or you're getting Berrios at 2.5 times more ownership than Giolito. So I don't think they're that different in the spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's see here. Let me just put the ownership in right now. So we got some, let me make sure this guy is still chalky enough to justify going to him next. Yeah, so Jose Suarez is going to be pretty highly owned everywhere still. Going against Baltimore, and Suarez is a guy who's had some strikeout ability so far on the year. He's got a 25.2% K rate after facing 147 Major League batters so far in 2019. He has been really bad versus right-handed batters, which you're going to find a lot of those in Major League Baseball, so that's kind of problematic. But he's got a 2.1 whip, 7.99 xFIP. I could have rounded up to 8, but I didn't. 8.1% home run rate, and a 47% fly ball rate. And the Angels Park has been a good home run park on the year as well. So there is some risk for Suarez. I actually am under the field on Suarez. He doesn't project particularly well. And this Baltimore lineup does strike out a lot versus lefties, but and doesn't really have a lot of worrisome power, but I just didn't quite land on as much Suarez as I thought I would. What are you doing with him today?
I thought I would end up with a ton of Suarez as well, and just kind of didn't get quite to where the field's at right now. So I'm, like with a lot of pitchers tonight, I'm around where he's at. If he's at, let's see, what did we just get him at? 22%?
28%.
28. Yeah, so yep. I'll be in that 20 to 30% range. I mean, he's got to be talked about as one of the better options tonight, and he is, he's got strikeout upside with the 25% K rate going up against Baltimore, who strikes out a lot, versus lefties. It is a decent park. He's expected to get a lot of run support as well, so pretty decent chance for the win, assuming he can go 5+ innings here. And it's just a decent price point for this guy. So there's a lot of positive things, and everybody knows that. So his ownership has come up throughout the day, rightfully so.
Yeah, I think it's a spot where the ownership on him is really making me a little more concerned about that righty upside, and then also just thinking about the Baltimore lineup there. I mean, not a great hitting lineup, but it is a well priced one overall. Has Alberto being the leadoff spot. He's been really good. Not a ton of power, it's just the 129 ISO, but a 153 WRC plus and only 11% K rate up top. They could definitely start out on the right foot with him, and he's very cheap as well. So I think he's an interesting little play there at 3,400 on DK. But yeah, it's a spot where I just feel like Suarez is a bit overowned, but it wouldn't shock me if he had a monster day today. He just doesn't project well for us at all.
Yeah, he really doesn't. I was disappointed to see his projection. I thought we would get him a point or two higher, and I could kind of justify making a major stand on him. But looks like that's not the case, and he's higher owned than he was this morning when we first had our first couple of runs of ownership. So things change throughout the day, especially on these weird slates. People kind of gravitate towards a couple pitchers, and it looks like there has been a clear hierarchy of pitching ownership so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's see who else is coming up. I feel like in the middle range, there really isn't anybody getting ownership besides Suarez. So who are you landing on in that mid-price tier?
Plutko is okay. I mean, it's just like you talk about all these guys. It's like, yeah, they could pick up a couple strikeouts and do all this stuff, and it's true. Like, I can't imagine getting to Plutko as an option in single entry if I was hand building. Brett Anderson, there's some positives to him as well in that he can get ground balls. He is efficient when he's got things really working, and he's going up against a team that strikes out a lot versus lefties. Now, no Gallo in that lineup. He's having surgery on his hand, I saw. So that really sucks for Texas and for DFS players who like playing Gallo. So maybe a little bit of a strikeout downgrade there for Brett Anderson. But he's another guy who can give you a win. He can go 6-7 innings at times. It's just you're really limiting your strikeout upside if you're playing $7,900 Brett Anderson. So
yeah, I did not land on Brett Anderson at all, but I could see why people would. It's just, at that price point, it's really hard to get there, especially the way he projects for us, which is not barely more than 1x value on that. The Rangers are bad versus left-hand pitching. That is one of their claims to fame. They really have nobody who can hit lefties. And as Jake mentioned, not having Gallo in there, it's going to be a pretty big downgrade. But it's still not a particularly strong spot for them. And Anderson also not a strong spot for him. So I really don't like either part of the equation that much.
Yeah, it's hard to like much about any of these other pitchers besides maybe like Berrios, and then the guys that are just priced super low, like VerHagen and I guess Giolito. But I don't know. Are we forgetting anyone in this mid range? I'm looking at all the value is on the early slate and with these other pitchers with Michaelis and Musgrove, and then you had DeGrom.
I don't mind going back to Plutko because I do think his numbers are interesting so he's been a bad pitcher mostly because he's given up a ton of home runs. Going back to last year, he's faced 523 batters. It's a 6.7% home run rate. You would think that would start to come down, but it is not because this year he's faced 197 batters and he's had a 7.1% home run rate, but inexplicably a 1.1 whip. So he is giving up nothing besides home runs for the most part, it looks like. And also just a 15.7% K rate for him on the year. But here's where it gets a little more interesting. So versus righties, he's actually competent, sort of, a 22% K rate, still giving up a ton of home runs, but a 1 whip as well versus right-handed batters. And he is getting a righty-heavy lineup here. I mean, you got Lopez and Vittoria, whatever that dude's name is on the bottom. I frankly don't think I've seen his name on a slate so far. But these guys here are not particularly daunting lefty batters. I don't think it's a terrible spot for Plutko, not one I want to be over the field on by much, but I think you can justify some exposure there.
Yeah, I suppose it's just he's such a low upside arm. I mean, 22% K rate versus righties for a righty, that's not even that great. And there is power in this Royals lineup with Dozier and Soler and Merrifield from the right side. He's just given up so much power. Good weather for hitting as well. So he's not someone that I'm getting to a ton. And I hope that sticks because it's pretty brutal to try to talk yourself into Plutko here.
Oh, and Roboshua pointing out in the premium Slack, which you get as part of that membership with our Awesemo Plus membership, to use that promo code live before lock now if you want to get in there. A lot of people talking there, a lot less noise than the YouTube chat, which can tend to have some people just going off and espousing things like a dictator. But in the premium Slack, it's all business. And Roboshua was pointing out Brett Anderson may be on a pitch count, is what he says. So,
let me see here. Didn't he just went 81 versus Minnesota 5 days ago? And also like he's not someone I'm super concerned about a pitch count with because he's not a guy you're looking for 8 strikeouts for. He's someone you're looking for 6 innings from, and he can do that in 65, 70 pitches when things are going well for him. So yeah, you'd like him to just be not on a pitch count, but I don't know if there's a source on that or whatever. But as long as it's not like 50 pitches or something, I still think he's playable.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, having him out there less might be a good thing for him because it just increases his likelihood of doing terrible things.
Could be, yeah.
If you're not striking anybody out and you're just out there longer, that's probably suboptimal. So who knows? Maybe he gets away clean for 5 innings and that's good enough.
Especially the third time through the order. Like they talk about that all the time on the broadcast, but just seeing your stuff a couple times and then not missing bats time and time again, like you're going to get in trouble oftentimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. One guy we should hit on fast because he is getting some ownership on the SP2 sites, Drew VerHagen, who is going against Seattle here. Not a particularly exciting play. He wasn't terrible last season. He only had a 1.4 whip, which to be clear is not great, but on this slate, we got to kind of take what we can get. 22.2% K rate and a 2.6% home run rate going back to last year. This year, though, 37 batters faced has been pretty bad for him with a 7.5 xFIP, 370 batting average allowed, still just a 2.7% home run rate, so that's not bad. But everything else has looked bad for him. He seems due for some positive regression. It does feel like he's a bit overowned too, and I'm going to have some Seattle bats because of that. What are you doing with VerHagen? Because he is cheap enough to help a lot of things occur.
Yeah, he's cheap enough, so he's 100% in play. Like, you should not be Xing him out because he hasn't been good at the minor league level. This is a completely different slate than what we see oftentimes. He's 4K, and he's fully stretched out, and he's going up against a team that strikes out a lot versus righties. So there are a bunch of scary bats. I really like Seattle as a stack as well, but VerHagen is... Yeah, he might be a little bit overowned right now. I think I'm coming in just under the field on him. Actually, no, not just under the field. I'm about half the field right now at 12%. So me and Laffy just said on the early show, I don't think we had him in the ownership, or we had him at like 4 or 5 or something percent. He was going to come way up as people just saw that there were no options on the slate throughout the day. So he's a 4K pitcher that can pitch a lot of innings here if things go really well, and if you're multi-entering, you certainly should have some exposure. I don't think I would get to him with one lineup though.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to justify it. And, this is a Seattle team who does hit right-handed pitching fairly well, at least with a couple guys. You have Vogelbach in there, who's got that, obviously, a ton of lefty power here, a 285 ISO, and he's another guy just hitting home runs, 152 WRC+. Narvaez as well, a little bit underappreciated as a catcher option, but I think he's actually pretty interesting at his price and a 131 WRC+, a little bit less power, but JP Crawford, too, actually, a pretty decent 215 ISO going against right-handed pitching. So these are a couple guys in there who can do damage against VerHagen. And, I think he's fine to have in there, but I also get why people may go to Seattle because that 5.4 implied run total also pretty high on the slate.
Yeah, and you're possibly knocking out 25% of the field as well. Yeah. So, there's a case to be made against pretty much any pitcher tonight, I think, based on the ownership we're seeing and just the amount of suspect pitching on the slate.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Anybody else you're getting before we move on to the home run picks? Because we are at the halfway point of the show.
Yeah, how about the other cheap guy? I guess the pivot, Ariel Giolito.
Boy.
It's a lower upside spot, and he's more expensive than VerHagen. But if he's just going to be a fifth of the ownership of VerHagen, why not just pivot there? We've seen Giolito have some actually really quality starts this season. Not a big strikeout guy, but a pretty favorable park, and he's just not getting ownership in that same exact range. So I think just math tells me to look his way a little bit more often than VerHagen, And that's what I'm going to do tonight. I actually have Giolito as my third highest exposed pitcher tonight right now.
Okay. You've laid out a perfectly credible case, but Jesus Christ, that's
well. To be fair, it's behind Berrios and LeBlanc, and there's a 15% gap right now.
So you have more Giolito than Giolito.
Yep. I mean,
Okay,
they're two completely different.
I know, but I still would disagree with that. All right, I get that was a well-made point though. I would say if you were a lawyer on that, you argued Giolito, I think he would still be getting the death sentence overall. But I'll add to it. He only has a 3% home run rate on the year, which isn't that bad. Also a 31.7% fly ball rate, so that ball is going to stay down in a park that's already going to help him out quite a bit. So I see the logic. I didn't get there, but I could see why you would. And yeah, he's not going to be an optimizer play because he doesn't project that well. But VerHagen probably shouldn't either, and neither should LeBlanc.
Yeah, no one does. I've never seen such bad values on our projections on Osmo.com. So tomorrow will be better, but tonight it just makes it a fun slate for MMEers, I think.
Yep, I would agree with that. All right, it's the halfway point of the show. It's Josh's favorite point of the show. Now he's showing up in the chat ready to make his picks because our boy, the Chubster, on a bit of a hot streak, 3 straight correct picks in a row. One of which was a double dong, so that's fun. That's fun to see. Emac still in first place with 21 total dongs. Jake in second place with 18. Josh now right behind him with 17, and I'm bringing up the rear with 14 because, well, Chris Rendon's making a lot of picks. So Chris Rendon may catch me in the negative column at some point, but it's been a tough call for the Chris's. Anybody born in the 80s to mid 90s should be celebrating us and hoping that we get out of that slide there because Chris was a very popular name, and Chris's should support Chris's. And on that note, Jake, I'm not letting you pick first. I'm going with Shohei Ohtani as my pick. So if he goes down today, you're all going down with me because Shohei Ohtani is chalk as shit.
Yeah, I like the pick. I think that's a phenomenal pick.
And the Joker-like approach too, right? Of blowing everybody up along the way.
Yeah. Although I was born in the mid '90s, and I'm not rooting for you and Chris. So everyone,
that's unfair. You are too much mid '90s, where it's a lot of Jakes and Hudsons and Dylans and such. Chris wasn't as much of a name back then.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I think Ohtani against Yacobonis and Eshelman, if he's still expected to come in. We have LA projected to score like 1 million runs tonight. Actually, let me see. 6.6 implied runs right now on the Osmo lineup builder page. That is the highest on the slate for anyone wondering. Alex comes up with his own totals here, so these are going to be a little bit different than what you see on maybe some other sites, but these are the totals that Alex comes up with, and the projections are derived from these totals. So Ohtani batting third, you would think he's batting third, under 5K. He's going to be chalky, but really good pick. My pick is also going to be pretty chalky, I would think, but actually he's not that chalky, and I'm double the field on him. Aaron Judge is my guy tonight against awful Rick Porcello.
All right, he's in there. And Josh and Emac are both in the chat, so they should have a pick in a moment. Of course, you want to be tailing their picks more than anybody because those boys are hot. Oh, Josh's pick is in. Mookie Betts.
Good pick. Good pick.
All right. Interesting. Going against Tanaka. Tanaka does struggle a little bit with power. So, yeah, can't hate on that too much. Actually, we should talk about Tanaka for a second. We're at the hitting point of the show, but it's going to be a fast hitting point of the show, I'm sure. Is there any logic in going to Tanaka today, given that the Red Sox are going to have some ownership? And Tanaka does theoretically have strikeout ability. I mean, he hasn't had it this year, 20.3% K rate, which is not good.
I can't make the case to go to Tanaka. I couldn't this morning. I mean, even with the ownership difference here, 4% right now, I still got to 0. And that's accounting for everything, correlation, ownership, leverage. Like, you just can't really make a case for it when there's two, better options above him. So if I found myself needing to go to Tanaka, I would just go to Suarez and eat the chalk there. I'm not that concerned with eating the pitcher chalk or trying to be overly different there.
Yeah, I could see having 1 or 2 lineups with him out of a mass multi-entry, like even if for max 20, like I should have gotten 1 or 2 in there because of the amount of Giolito I have. But just 4% ownership for Tanaka, and you're theoretically getting some pretty decent leverage on some of these guys here. Bet's going to be pretty owned. Devers going to be pretty owned. JD going to be pretty owned. So yeah, it's not the craziest idea. Also, Emac's pick is in. Dan Vogelbach is in fact his pick. So EMAC going with Dan Vogelbach, Jake going with Aaron Judge. I'm going with Shohei Ohtani because I'm taking you all down with me if I fail today. And Mookie Betts going to Josh. So those are the picks. So go play him. And if Chris Rendon has one, we'll chime in as well because he's too handsome to ignore. I think we can all agree with that.
That's right.
You know that more than anybody. I see your little man crush during your hours.
Are you kidding? I mean, yeah, I watched him before I met him. It's crazy stuff.
Josh and I talked about that a little bit. We were like, Jake kind of like marks out, like gets a little fanboyish because he loves The Bachelor, and then gets to do his show with Chris Rendon.
Yeah, dude, I used to hate the show, and now I watched it, and I wasn't forced to watch it or anything, but I just started watching it because the girlfriend wanted to watch it, and yeah, man, it's pretty good TV. It's pretty entertaining, I will say that. And yeah, Chris's season was pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it from female friends who I told that I work with him now, and they seem like they weren't the biggest fans, but I think maybe there was some redemption arc on Bachelor in Paradise that he had.
Yeah, he was also on Bachelor in Paradise too. Funny
which
guy.
Seems like if you're gonna go on a show and try to come off like looking good and looking like a great human being, that is a tough show to pull that off on, I would think.
That's very true. But he did it. He did
do it. All right. So right now we still have enough time. If you want to get in on the Osmo Plus fun, get half off your first month with that promo code Live Before Lock. Just get in there. All the data that we talk about, the top stacks tool, the lineup builder, a lot of things that'll help you make better lineups every day. So go check it out now. Go to osmo.com/join to join for half off your first month. And use that promo code Live Before Lock right now. And also, we are doing a giveaway. We're doing a lot of preseason football giveaways, which you don't even have to be right for, which I didn't realize. I thought these were long-term payout tickets, but in fact, we're just randomly giving away 3 months of Osmo Plus memberships. All you have to do right now, go to Osmo_com, our Twitter handle, and go check out the giveaway. It's a pinned tweet right there. You have to do a little reply and retweet. All you have to do is tell it, hey, who the best PPR running back is for this 2019 NFL season. You do that, you'll be entered to win. You don't even have to be right about it. We're just drawing it randomly because that's how much we care and want to get people in for the NFL season. So go check that out. And of course, also check out our free content right now. We're doing a lot of preseason NFL stuff because we're getting ready. We're only a month and change out. A lot of you will be drafting sooner. So we're doing all sorts of preseason content related to drafting, related to things that we're looking at. Lofty and I have been breaking down each position, our breakouts, our sleepers, our busts. I had a hot take about the Vikings receivers busting, which was tough to put in print. But if I'm right about that one, I'll look like a fucking genius. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Wait, so Thielen or Diggs or both?
I think one of them has a decent probability of busting, and I think there's a decent chance that both of them end up being not worth where they're being drafted.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't know where they're being drafted, but I'll brush up on my skills with all the content on the site.
Yeah, I mean, go check it out. There's a pretty credible argument for it with the Vikings bringing in Gary Kubiak as their de facto offensive coordinator, even though they already have one. And I think they're going to run a lot more. Lofty disagreed, though, for the most part, and I think had some good points as well. So as we're trying to do, we're trying to embrace debate, and we're going to have more content coming up for the NFL, obviously, as we get closer to game time. Let's go check that out now. All right, Jake, hitters, who's going to be your top stack of the day?
Top stack of the day. I think a lot of the people that use the Osmo.com projections, the premium projections, of course, I think they're going to get a lot of these two teams. There's kind of two teams tied for me, but I think it's going to be Seattle that I'm going to have the most exposure to against VerHagen. It's either going to be Seattle, LA, or the Yankees might creep up there depending on our last couple ownership updates that we see here. But Seattle against VerHagen. He's struggled at the minor league level. He's getting ownership, so just an extra bonus there. I understand why he's getting ownership again. I'm playing some VerHagen as well, but I'm getting a ton of Malik Smith and Narvaez, especially right now, my highest exposed hitter on the slate, which is weird on a solo position. Like you often get that with outfielders where you'll get a ton of a guy because there's 3 different outfielders you can choose from in each lineup. But yeah, I'm getting a ton of Narvaez, Vogelbach, Emax home run pick, and everyone's cheap, and they've got a really good implied total, and you get extra leverage with them. So I like me some Seattle. How about you?
So they're not my top stack. Mine is an obvious one, which we'll segue over to next. But yeah, I agree. I do think there's leverage now that we know that VerHagen's going to have some ownership on him. And, he has struggled this year, even though he's probably the most due for some positive things to come out of everybody on the slate. He is a guy who has looked bad and is going to be owned because of that near minimum price, or I guess actually a minimum price, basically. it's a spot where people are going to own him. And I agree that there are a couple guys there. I talked about him when we talked about VerHagen, Crawford, Narvaez, Vogelbach. Those guys all look pretty viable to me. Austin Nola as well. You want to try to differentiate from Vogelbach at first base. I think that's a way you can try to do that. Is much less ownership, about a seventh of the ownership that Vogelbach will have. And Nola has had some pop too. So yeah, I think it's a decent move, and everything kind of does support, even if you have a good amount of VerHagen, to get some Seattle in your lineups.
Yeah, they're hard to avoid, I think, on this slate. So, I mean, 25% ownership for a 4K pitcher, you're going to get a completely different lineup construction than a lot of people, especially with the people with VerHagen and all that extra leverage that you get there. So it all just really lines up for me. And, mini stacks, full stacks, whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of both for me. Who's your top stack?
So it's a real brave take. I'm going with the Angels, Jake. They're a little team out of Anaheim who pretends to be from Los Angeles. And it's a warm day here by LA standards, and it's a really nice spot going against Yacobonis, who's bad versus lefties, but really doesn't matter because he's not going to be in there for the entire game. And the Baltimore bullpen is one of the worst in the league, and I would say pretty clearly the worst on the slate. A 1.6 whip allowed, a 6.0. Wait, is that 6? No, it's a 5. Sorry, 5.01 xFIP. I have weird coloring on that one, so the number's hard to read. Giving up a ton of home runs, not striking anybody out. So a bad Baltimore bullpen and Angels team with the highest run total on the slate. From an ownership perspective, there's probably reasons to go elsewhere, but the full stacks aren't as owned. It looks like it's going to be a lot of people mini stacking the outfield, which kind of offers some interesting options on how to differentiate with that stack, where if you put in Cole Calhoun instead of one of Trout, Ohtani, or Upton, that'll differentiate right away. Or if you include the guys like a Rengifo down at the bottom of the order, our favorite, who sounds like a Pokemon, or Pujols, who has had power. There are ways to make it work without as much ownership, and I'm there a lot.
Yeah, I think the Angels are right up there for me. I mean, highest implied total on Alex's rankings, and going up against Yacobonis and this terrible Baltimore team. I mean, pretty good weather in Anaheim. I always say LA, and it's not LA. They're Anaheim for whatever reason. Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. So they got to fix that. But yeah, it's such a good spot here for the Angels, and you get Trout, Ohtani, and Upton, I think, all pretty well priced. Even Trout at 5,700. They're just all going to be super highly owned. That doesn't mean you can't get a unique stack with them, though. Like if you use one of those guys at the bottom. So I'm not really worried about their ownership. I think they are a phenomenal play tonight. I can't really say anything negative about them.
Yeah, I think they're in a really nice spot here. And again, they'll see some different matchups because that Baltimore bullpen being in there, and Yacobonis is not a guy who typically goes very deep. Just 2 innings pitched about a game usually for him, and I could come up a little bit, but that's generally where he's been overall in the last year and change. So yeah, I like the Angels, and I'm willing to go to them a lot. Who is going to be your number 2 stack?
No, the Angels are probably my number 2 behind Seattle, but after that, let's see here. After that, I really like the Yankees a lot against Porcello. I don't think Porcello is very good. He has not missed bats at all this season. I think he's kind of been overrated for a couple years now, but you see a pretty decent implied total here against the Red Sox. The Yankees have a 6.3 implied total, just loaded with power all over the place against a guy, like I said, who's not going to make you swing and miss very often, and they're coming in pretty under-owned. So there's a ton to love about the Yankees here. You're getting Aaron Judge at basically a third of the ownership of a guy like Trout, who I think projects pretty similarly to him.
Yeah, Porcello has been very bad on the year, a 5.3 xFIP, and also a 17.5% K rate. The one thing that kind of jumps out to me, though, is anything wrong with him where he's going to be that much worse than the sample size going back to last year? Because going back to last year, he's given up similar numbers, but just the xFIP was lower, 4.4 xFIP, a 21.2% K rate. So maybe he's due for some better days, and maybe this is one of the spots where he has them, because the Yankees are going to be pretty well owned, and the prices are, you have 4 guys above 5,000 in the top 4, and then a couple guys in the high 4s right after him. And Higashioka is really the only cheap guy there, and certainly not an exciting play at all. I don't know. I'm a little bit under the field on the Yankees. Actually, I might be decently under the field. They do project to be a top stack a lot of the time, according to our top stacks tool. So that makes me feel kind of concerned. I just feel like Porcello is not good, but maybe not quite as not good as he's been this year, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, actually. Yeah, I mean, just for me, it's just second highest implied total in the slate. They're difficult to stack, which I really love. I give priority to hitters, and this is like you got to make an uncomfortable play when you play the Yankees, and people just don't really like doing that. That's why you're seeing concentrated ownership basically always on these top pitchers. But they're difficult to fit in on DraftKings especially, and they're going really under-owned right now.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it makes sense to go there. I just would put that caveat out there, and that's one reason that I didn't land there quite as much, combined with my Angels love, and then some of the options out there for leverage, I think jumped out a little bit more because nobody's really going to be on Porcello. So watch him have a blowout day. That's actually one concern I do have about this game, is that it just ends up being a pitcher's duel somehow against kind of the logic of the point totals there, because these guys both seem like they're due for kind of better performances than they've had so far this season.
That's fair enough. I mean, I could see Porcello trolling me, of course, but he's done it a ton of times. It's baseball. It could certainly happen. I think more often than not, though, the Yankees do pretty well here.
Yeah, they are a good hitting team. I'll go on a limb and say the Yankees are a good hitting team.
I'll second that. Yeah, I want a piece of that take as well.
Let's just talk about the other side. Are you getting any Boston going against Tanaka? I know that Josh obviously is going to be a fan of some of these guys here because he has Mookie Betts as his home run pick, but what about you?
Man, I'm not getting really any Boston right now, and that's worrisome. Like, I usually get some shares of Betts and JD. I think both of those guys are under double digits for me right now in exposure. It's not like they're super heavily owned, so I'm not making that big of a stance on them, but I thought I would get more Boston filler stacks because I do like some power against Tanaka, especially I like Josh's pick of Mookie Betts just for a number of reasons, speed and power combo, and he leads off, so expected plate appearances as many as anyone. Good total for Boston here as well, but they just kind of didn't make the cut for me as full stacks today.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people are landing too. The three-man stack looks to be popular with either as I mentioned before, it's either Betts, Devers, Bogarts, and Martinez, and I think the Bogarts and Martinez part seems like they're being swapped around the most. But a full stack here is not very owned, and you are getting a Boston team who won the year as a 211 ISO. This lineup is a 211 ISO versus right-hand pitching, a 122 WRC plus in their lineup today. And those are very big numbers going against righties here. And Tanaka has given up power with a 4% home run rate on the year. So it's possible they get to him, and that full stack is going to be owned. And this is one of those spots, too, where I think you take the hitting talent against the pitcher who's competent, and that can pay off a decent amount of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think more often than not, Boston, again, they do fine. So I have no interest in Tanaka, really. I would be much more likely to go to Boston bats here, but I'm not really getting to either side of that. I think it's just in the projections, Tanaka is just good enough to limit a team like this.
Yep, I think that's fair. Are you getting any of Cleveland? Because they are a team who projects for a decent amount of ownership and should also have a better chance of being a top stack relative to their ownership. I have some, and Montgomery's been bad on the year. Also, his power numbers have gone up quite a bit. He had a 2.5% home run rate going back to last year. This year, maybe he's been unlucky, but it's up to a 5.2% rate, giving up no soft contact, down to a 10% rate there, a lot more hard contact. He looks like a guy who should be able to give up some production today against Cleveland. Are you getting there at all?
Yeah, I am getting there. Quite a bit, actually. Over the field on, it looks like a lot of their hitters, which I'm excited about. I always get Lindor just leading off for under 5K against a bad pitcher in Montgomery. So I'm with that basically all the time. And then you've got some expensive pieces that people don't really want to pay up for in like Mercado. He's not getting the ownership he probably should against the lefty. It's good hitting weather, as I said when we talked about Plutko. And yeah, I think they're just going a little bit under-owned, and they are if you look at the top stack tool.
Yeah, I think they are an interesting team here. And you mentioned Mercado. His guy has been playing really well. Even as his Cleveland stack has kind of gone up and down for the most part, he is a guy who's been hitting well. And Jordan Luplow, the Ginger Assassin as well, with a 155 WRC plus versus left-hand pitching. Maybe he's kind of coming back, finding his depth, but he's been good too with a 326 ISO. And that's in a pretty decent 150 at-bat sample size. So he's been doing well, kind of under the radar always and a little bit under the price. And obviously Lindor, they all look strong here. One thing I would say, though, which I kind of wish I didn't get as much of, was a lot of the lineups I had with Cleveland, I kind of had to manually get it out there. I was getting a lot of Jason Kipnis, who's pretty bad versus lefties. Same thing for Jake Bauers. Both those guys on really just terrible WRC pluses. Kipnis with a 57 versus a lefty. Bauers with a 73, which is a little more palatable. Are you trying to get away from the Kipnises and Bauers in this matchup at all, or are you just taking what you got?
So I would be if they were getting ownership. Like if they were a bad righty going up against a lefty, but they were getting like double-digit ownership because the stack was chalky and they were cheap. I would be trying to get away from them. But looking at it right now, I'm actually over on Kipnis. And then let's see, where's Bowers at here? Do I have Bowers? I'm right at Bowers right now. So they're not major parts of the Cleveland stack. Like they're well below where I have the good parts of it. But I'm fine getting those guys as like if they're the last piece of a 5-man stack, then that's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah. So I got one lineup out of 20 for both of them in separate ones. So that's where I was kind of okay with. I really don't want to go there. And I think the optimizers may push you there. And I think it's just one thing that is worth pointing out is that I really don't think it's a good spot for Kipnis or Bowers. The bullpen, though, will offer up some righties who will probably be comparably bad, though. So I guess if you want to take solace, that is one place to do it. But yeah, just not crazy about Kipnis or Bowers on the spot. Chris Rendon's home run pick is in, by the way, and he's also joining me on the Angels today. So he's going with Justin Upton. And I have Shohei Ohtani. Josh has Mookie Betts. Jake has Aaron Judge. And Emac has Dan Vogelbach, a popular Emac pick who I feel like owes Emac a Make-A-Wish home run. Sometimes Vogelbach, actually, how many times do you think that Emac has guessed Dan Vogelbach? And how many times has he hit a home run for him?
I would say he's guessed him 8 times with 4 homers.
Okay, so hold on. I'm counting it out. This actually may be slow. Let's talk about one more stack you have that we haven't hit on yet. And I'm going to count Emacs Dan Vogelbach while you do it.
All right, cool. Another stack that's coming up for me that I was fully not expecting to get to really at all, but I kind of understand it. I can kind of talk my way through like basically any reason to get to most stacks I get to. So just going off the numbers, but Baltimore was one that I got to quite a bit. VR, even in the 6th spot, grades out really, really well for us, as does Severino. From a value perspective, $3,300 catcher. You're obviously getting a lot of leverage off of Suarez, who is, I think, almost 30% owned, and we'll see where he falls as we get our last ownership update. Oh, we just got one minute ago.
Okay, and also speaking of ownership updates, I got one for Emac. So this is actually a surprising statistic to me. He's guessed it 8 times. He's guessed Dan Vogelbach. 6 times he has not hit a home run. 2 times he has. So I guess that's also about Emac's hit rate. So maybe it does kind of level out. But
okay,
yeah, interesting. It's a lot of no Dan Vogelbach, but I guess that kind of shows the home run game in a nutshell.
Yeah, the home run game's tough unless you're Josh and you just dong 3 straight days.
Yeah, it's real tough for the working man, guys like me and Chris Rendon, just trying to make it. There's a couple of working men at the coal mines out in Los Angeles, the DFS coal mines. Yeah. So, sorry, which team are you talking about? I was too lost in Emac.
Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're given the ownership on Suarez. We talked about it before. Suarez probably due for some better days, but also just hasn't been good versus righties on the year. So I have no problem going to righties there. And there's going to be some power, and also the park is going to help out power. So there are some credible reasons to go to Baltimore, and that ownership as well for Suarez, pretty high still.
Yeah, man. It's like I'm playing all these stacks against all these pitchers. I feel like I'm going to stack every team tonight, which actually isn't a terrible idea in general. Because, I mean, Alex even says all the time, if he could have it his way, he would try to stack every single team, every slate. But it's not realistic when you're ranking out lineups. Some teams just aren't going to project well no matter how much you try to boost them with low ownership or whatever it is. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in lineup study where my amount of stacks end up on certain teams, especially like Baltimore. Were you on them at all today? Like, did they stick out to you at all today?
I got him a couple times because of the leverage for Suarez, because he's highly enough owned there. And you do have a couple guys who have power. Like I know I have some Mancini, I know I have some Nunez. I think I try to get to Alberto, even though he doesn't have great power. I think he's kind of my ideal part of that 3-man stack. And I'm pretty sure I have some Severino as well because he's, I guess he actually does have some ownership on him now. But he has enough power where he could be useful, and maybe he's the one who kind of gets that production from Suarez. But yeah, I get it. I think from a game theory standpoint and just a price and projection standpoint, I could see why you'd land there, and it's not a bad idea.
Oh, it could be a bad idea, but
that's true. Yeah. It could be, but could also be a good idea. I think that's where we are today, is like these are all 50-50 things today, more than ever. I mean, you could say it always is with DFS, but today in particular, there's a lot of lot of shrug emoji type plays.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's all it's gonna be. So when I bink everything, I'll just shrug. I'll just tweet out the shrug emoji when I bink the 50K tonight.
When you have a slate like this too, I mean, obviously you always consider leverage. A lot of the guys here who are hosting shows for the channel do weigh that as part of the formulas they look at. Are you weighing it more so on a short slate because you are more directly going to get leverage on certain guys?
I do. Yeah, I do weigh it a little bit more on shorter slates. So I upped it just a little bit. So I'm getting a little bit more of like Detroit and Baltimore, but Baltimore just projects well enough from a value perspective, and they're low enough owned that I'm getting them regardless. But yeah, I like doing that on these shorter slates, especially for like 2 gamers. I mean, you don't really have to because you're going to get leverage no matter what. But especially for these 4 to 8 game slates, I think it is a little bit more important.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that makes sense. Thomas Tyner in the YouTube chat saying the Angels lineup is going to screw everyone. That is a concern here, but I really like Yacobonis isn't a guy like for Asher Wojciechowski on Sunday. Emac and I talked about it on the Saturday show, and I was like, yeah, he's got a lot of strikeouts. That's one thing that jumped out to me. I didn't play the Sunday slate only for Asher to have the day of a lifetime, and I wish I had been on a show putting that out there in the world, but Yacobonis has none of those signs of him being like a good pitcher who's got some things that are going to work for him at some point. Not missing bats particularly well, just a 9.5% swing strike rate, an 18.7% K rate. Like there were reasons to point to for Wojciechowski why he might get there, and I do not see any for Yacobonis, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one for Jimmy Y here. He's probably not going to go deep, but the strikeouts are just so difficult to get against the Angels. What's going on, by the way, with these Angels lately not putting their lineup in? Like, they're not even waiting for an injury. Who's injured? I don't know.
Well, they've had injuries before, and yeah, I guess, Ohtani has been out for the Dodgers games because they don't have a DH, so maybe that's, I don't know. They've gotten lazy, probably, is what it is.
Yeah, they're back home. There's no excuse. I mean, is Justin Bour ready? That's the only thing I could think of.
Well, Jake, here in California, things move a little more slowly.
Yeah, you guys are a little more go with the flow. Us Midwesterners just want it now, right?
No, I mean, I'm a New Yorker at heart. That's why I talk fast, and for me, LA people in general, and especially like outside of LA, which is where Anaheim is, if you're not familiar with the geography, a little more slower region there. Things are just a little more easy going. So they're just hanging out with their flip flops on, their Javianas on, kicking their feet up and waiting to make a lineup. Then they just get too stoned and forget until the last minute, and then they submit it.
Is that how it works now?
I think so. I think that's how professional baseball lineups work. Yes.
Nice.
Somebody will prove me wrong in the YouTube chat, I'm sure.
Everything we say is 100% serious, so
True. That's one thing people forget about this show.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's do the Paul Blackburn tonight. We do have 12 minutes. It is a 7:10 Eastern time start today, so we are not up against it. So you have some time to make your lineups. You even have time to hit that like button right now on the YouTube channel. Help us keep the lights on. And you even have time to go get an Awesemo Plus membership for half off your first month with that promo code Live Before Lock. So, luxuriate in all that time you have. But our boy Makad wants to know the Paul Blackburn of the night, the award that historically goes to a bad pitcher who's also cheap and could find his way into a tournament-winning lineup. Jake, who would that be today?
How about Ariel Jurado? I mean, everyone's going to take I keep wanting to say VerHagen or something, but the guy for Detroit. Anyways, I'm taking Giolito. He's my Paul Blackburn of the night. Who you got?
So let's see. So the only other guy around that price range who would be available to take is Mike Montgomery, and I don't know.
You can take a higher price guy. Like you can take Plutko. I think that would count, or someone like that.
Yeah. Well, Plutko's actually kind of owned too. He's not a guy I'm playing either, and I don't think he has any upside, but I feel like it would be very fitting for this night if Yacobonis just like dusted the Angels for 4 innings and the bullpen just kind of survived.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Porcello. You were a little nervous about him.
You know what? At the same price point, that is a better call. But I think the thing with Yacobonis is you're getting so much leverage on that Angels ownership where like that's a lot of lineups that die right away.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But Porcello too, same logic. Just play. I think honestly, I'd be curious to see how this would do if you entered the mini max today and just played all the garbage pitchers and saw how it shook out. Like, would you win? Would you lose?
Well, I'll let you know how that works because that's exactly what I'm doing.
That's a fair point, but you're spreading it out pretty intelligently at least.
That's what I do every slate. Just play everyone that sucks and then wonder why I don't make money.
Makad saying he loves the crappy Texas pitchers too. They are chronically, he says, his Paul Blackburn of the night. So that's true. Texas pitchers do for their flaws, which are many, they do generally limit home runs pretty well and limit production pretty well. Like for Gerardo to have that home run rate when he pitches half the time in Texas, it's actually pretty impressive.
I mean, when Lance Lynn is your ace, that tells you everything you need to know.
That one Lance Lynn day, I'll always remember turning on. That was the first day after All-Star break, and I was like, Lance Lynn has like 13 strikeouts. What the fuck? It's just like, I'm not ready for you, baseball. I don't want this back in my life.
Yeah, now we'll just get tilted in 6 weeks when our running backs get hurt or whatever, first play of the game.
Can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. We didn't talk about Oakland, and we probably should real fast because you mentioned Gerardo and why you like him. But obviously, it is an Oakland team that has a lot of power. That is kind of their staple. A lot of power, a lot of hard contact. You going to have any Oakland given the Gerardo exposure that you'll have?
I barely have any Oakland. So if this is the Chris Davis day where he finally busts out, that'll be pretty disappointing. But they don't grade out that well from a top stack percentage. They're getting a little bit of ownership, and then they're not that great values outside of Chris Davis if you think that he's fully healthy or he's all there. With whatever's going on with him right now, you just can't hit. So he's in a massive slump. It's like the Chris Davis thing, the other Chris Davis thing earlier in the season.
Tough home run season for Chris's overall.
I know, man. They're just trading off cold streaks and hot streaks for that matter. But yeah, they're just not a team that I really got to tonight. How about you?
I wanted to get there more, honestly, and I didn't quite get there because of the no ownership on Gerardo. And these guys do project pretty well, but it's a tough park. And I was, mini stacks I was kind of hoping would occur more, and I have a few, but not quite as much. So I think I'm just mostly with the field. Might be underneath it for the guys like Chapman and Olsen. Less so with Davis. I think I might have gotten a little bit of Davis. But yeah, I don't love the spot as much as I wanted to, and that total's also come down throughout the day a bit too. I believe it was at 5.5 earlier. Now it's down to 5.3, which is not a great sign.
Yeah, that's never fun, but
yeah, tough park. I like their park. It's sort of feels ironic given that they have all these power hitters and their park just kind of sucks for power. Like feels like a bit of a waste, but I guess that's why you have the more powerful hitters so they can generate those runs.
Yeah. Exactly.
I guess I proved my own point then. Never mind. So, very smart. I'm questioning Moneyball on the show. That's where we are with a 6-game slate. I'm like, is Billy Beane really that smart? I don't know.
Yeah. What did he ever do?
Oh boy, one of those days. Looking for any questions right now in the YouTube chat or the premium Slack. So get in there. Raj in the premium Slack asking an either or question, which whatever, we'll fill time with that. Hickson, Lindor, or Mancini and Judge? Which of those combos sounds more appealing to you, Jake?
I want to say Mancini and Judge, but I would, if you're a premium member, obviously, so I would just go into the projections page and just see which combo projects higher. If you're doing a cash game, GPP, it's a little bit different. Both really quality options, I think.
Yeah, I think those are both pretty strong ones. I might favor Hickson Lindor just because I could see Mancini having a bad day amongst that Suarez ownership, and like Hickson Lindor feels a little bit safer to me. Even though Judge, if Jake's picking him for home runs, he's got upside, so that's I don't mind it, but I think I would go Hickson Lindor. I feel a little safer with that. Any Kansas City leverage stacks for you? Kansas City, a team that we haven't talked about at all, but there is some ownership on Plutko, and Plutko, as we mentioned earlier, just insanely high home run rates that don't seem sustainable, but yet they have been time and again.
I don't like KC really as a full stack. I do like Dozier and Soler though. Those, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's not an appealing spot, I don't think, for KC, despite Plutko's issues with power. So no to full KC stacks. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of mini stacks and one-offs amongst them. I know I have some Whit Merrifield. I saw some Soler as well. I think I might have actually kind of wish I had Gordon. So Gordon's not a great power hitter, but Plutko's lefty splits have been really egregious, which I think I hinted at but didn't say out loud. But 6.9 xFIP versus lefties, as well as the same high home run rate, 6.6%, and a 12.5% K rate versus lefty bats. So Plutko, I think Gordon may be a bit under-owned if you are going to mini stack KC because Gordon's not owned at all. But there is ownership going to Merrifield, Dozier, and Soler. But still not the most exciting team in the world.
Yeah. Man, the Yankees ownership came up a little bit, so they went down a touch in my sheet. So that's a little bit disappointing, but I think I'm still over on them. Let's see here. I got all my lineups uploaded now.
Yeah, what do you got? What are your final numbers?
Ooh, more Jose Berrios than I expected. quite a few more shares than I thought. I got 63% Berrios on DK. And, man, just so many Seattle bats. My first 8 hitters are all Seattle bats.
Yeah, that's a lot of Seattle. I'm 50% Berrios, so I'm not far behind you, but that was sort of my cap for it. And then I have a comparable amount of Giolito, and then a couple of just random kind of ones, but should actually have thrown in a little Tanaka. But I have actually a couple of Giolito Berrios lineups, which I find intriguing as a concept, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's just, man, I've got a lot of Angels too, and I'm just wondering what they could do with this lineup that is making them wait so long. So
maybe take Pujols out. I don't know. Because, well, who's not in there right now who would be good? So I feel like Goodwin seems like a natural guy they could put in there. And Kevin Smith's also pretty bad going against a righty pitcher. So maybe take him out and go with somebody else.
I mean, I suppose why wait this long? I don't know. Be convenient for us, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think my theory about them just broing out and smoking some weed is probably the best approach.
Yeah. Each passing minute, I start to believe you more and more.
Shannon in the YouTube chat, MLB should make these teams post by a certain time every day. The late lineup stuff is pointless. I would agree. I feel that about NBA as well. Like, there's really no point to this, especially when these teams were invested in the leagues. I don't know if they still are, if they've divested that, but yeah, just making it easier on us as hosts and you guys out there and everybody who's playing would be nice, but unfortunately that isn't always the case. And the Angels have been stragglers lately.
Yeah, stragglers is a great word for it. Just
It's just like, what are you missing out on if like the lineups had to be in by whatever, half an hour before it locks? Like maybe one guy is injured, but is he going to miss 2 days in a row? Probably not, especially for baseball where you have 162 games.
I think baseball's behind the times in that they don't understand that. I would guess a large portion of their audience is watching for gambling or DFS or both purposes.
Yeah,
so people would like the information earlier.
And maybe somebody in the food chain profits occasionally from it, but I don't think it's fair to expect that. Like, I want to believe the best out of people, even though it's probably illogical.
For what?
Like that they're not monetizing it in some way where they're like, oh, like we're not going to tell anybody that Mike Trout's sitting today because he's got the shits.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, could be. Who knows?
Let's hope Mike Trout doesn't have the shits. Let's hope Shohei Ohtani really doesn't have the shits, especially out of everybody who's not going to have the shits.
You can, if the lineup comes out and Chris or your guy's out, then you guys can switch. I think I'm cool with that. Just take someone from the late slate. Just take anyone in the Seattle lineup because they're going to all dong.
That's true, except Dan Vogelbach, Emacs, the guy who breaks Emacs' heart 70% of the time, 75%.
Yeah. I would have thought his home run rate was closer to 100 than 25, but
Emacs keeps, but I guess technically it is a higher rate than his overall numbers because like 25% would be a pretty good hit rate for home runs. So if you just go to Vogelbach every day and he hits a home run 25% of the time, yeah, it's actually right in line with Emacs pick ratio.
Yeah,
Emacs very symmetrical for our old pal. He is just symmetrical in every way. It sounds like an insult, but I'm just like impressed.
Yeah, I don't know if I should laugh. Is it an insult? Is it a compliment?
Like a 25% hit rate, and also he's made 80 picks on the year. Like that's really strong symmetry.
Yeah, symmetrical. I guess people. Yeah, I mean that's typically a compliment. So compliment to you, I suppose,
yeah.
Emac.
Thank you. A compliment to me for giving Emac a thinly veiled compliment.
There you
go. All right, you got 1 minute left to lock, so get your stuff in right now. We are cruising towards it, and nothing is going to change at this point. I guess Angel's just gonna leave us in the lurch.
So, yeah, people are talking about gambling in the YouTube chat. Actually, interesting conversation. So much money, you'd think those changes could happen for Vegas at least. Yeah, exactly. You'd think so, right? PGA got in bed with DraftKings. Did you see that? That's pretty big.
I did see that. Yeah, I saw Jason Roslin posted that in our chat.
Yeah, so the PGA guys were excited about that. I like playing PGA DFS too, so I think that's a good thing. Hopefully, a sign of things to come for other leagues if they're not already partnered with DraftKings and FanDuel and Yahoo.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I think that they're going to benefit from it. I mean, the thing with a lot of states, I'm seeing with the SEO betting articles I've had to do for the site, like some of the states are kind of being weird with it, and and they're like trying to squeeze licensing fees out of the leagues to allow betting in the state and stuff like that. Like in Illinois, a former Raiders linebacker is who he was on. Napoleon Harris is like a congressman or something, or a state senator, I forget what it is. But he was pushing a bill through where like Illinois will get a piece of all the action from the leagues, and the leagues also get paid somehow. So a lot of people trying to get money in, and maybe once they get that money in for themselves, then they'll be more motivated. But for now, it seems like not that likely.
Hopefully it'll get figured out while DFS is still around. That would be very helpful to us, though.
Hopefully. All right, we are locked now. So thank you guys for watching the show. Of course, hit that like button on the way out. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. We have night slate content. All the ownership projections and the player projections will be updated. If the Angels are somebody random goes out, you'll get an edge on the field in a pretty big way. We'll have projections updated whenever the Angels do finally get their lineup out there. Let's go check it out now. Use that promo code live before lock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. Jake, what's going on for you in the next day or so? You're out, right?
Yeah, so I'm out from live stream content. I will be at a wedding on Saturday, but I'll be still working, still be around, and I'll be in Slack if you guys need me or, want to troll me or whatever after my judge pick tonight. But yeah, not much for me the next couple of days. How about you?
So I mean, good for you. Get some time off, get the wedding, get your little wedding buzz on. I will be hosting the Deeper Dive tomorrow with Adam, which I'm excited for as an admirer of Adam, as we talk about on these live before lock shows all the time. Jake and I, and Josh and I to a lesser extent, we both love the Deeper Dive. So as a fan of the Deeper Dive, I'm excited to go on there and do a show with my coworker.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. I think you guys will make for a pretty good combo as well.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Hopefully I can fill the big shoes that Laffy leaves behind for one day, but it'll be fun hanging out with Adam. And tomorrow it'll be Josh and Chris Randone on here, so hopefully he'll represent us, Chris, as well. The two handsomest boys on the channel, both Josh and Chris Randone, finally together on one show. If you can handle all that in one screen, tune in tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate the support a ton. Hit that like button on the way out, and we'll see you again soon. So good luck, guys. Enjoy your night.